In 2023, if the protection and preservation of children's safety and innocence is not something that we can all find common ground on, regardless of our political persuasions, it's hard not to feel like all is lost. I was not emotionally prepared for the new film Sound of Freedom when I walked into the movie theater. Now, if you've heard of this film, you've absolutely heard it be mischaracterized, slandered in the corporate press. You've heard it referred to as a right-wing film, as a Christian film, as a conspiracy movie, as a QAnon film. You know, they use all the buzzwords to make this film as radioactive as possible.
Sound of Freedom, it specifically is looking at QAnon concepts of these child trafficking rings that are run by the high-level elites. Now, it's not true.
Have you watched Sound of Freedom yet? It has the backing of not just Republicans and religious conservatives, not just Ted Cruz and Elon Musk, but also QAnon folks and the internet's tinfoil hat brigade.
So what is the movie really? Well, first of all, you need to watch it to see for yourself. It is an anti-human trafficking, anti-child trafficking specifically film. The film is absolutely devastating to watch. It is emotionally taxing. I've never been in a movie theater where you can actually hear people sniffling and crying and having to look away from the screen. So these were my raw thoughts that I tweeted after watching the movie. I walked out of Sound of Freedom halfway through crying. 50% of my tears were from sorrow for the children, and 50% was from rage about how crystal clear it became that the only reason our media is attacking this film is because the world is ran by pedophiles. A bitter pill. And those were my raw thoughts walking out of the film, and I still feel the same way. Rolling Stone says, Sound of Freedom is a superhero movie for dads with brainworms. U.S. Republicans' favorite summer blockbuster flirts with anti-Semitic QAnon blood libel. Here are the right-wing figures from Donald Trump to Steve Bannon championing surprise hit Sound of Freedom. Now, you're not going to understand the full picture of how absolutely ludicrous, ridiculous, and disgusting it is for these types of headlines you made about this film unless you watch it yourself. So again, go watch it. The movie highlights the very real, not conspiracy theory of human trafficking. Need I remind you of another thing that was considered a conspiracy theory up until 5 seconds ago, which was the fact that a little guy named Jeffrey Epstein had a little island where the most powerful people, the tippity top of government officials, celebrity, Hollywood, would go and partake in some really scary things with minors. Do we need to remind you that that was considered a conspiracy theory until 5 minutes ago? Right. I remember when you would talk about it on social media, you would get inundated with hate from people who were saying that it was crazy. You had the corporate press saying you were crazy. And now there are all these videos coming out with people saying that they knew the entire time.
It hides in plain sight. Epstein was hiding in plain sight. We all knew about him. We all knew what he was doing.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now.
Also, how can the term conspiracy theory ever even really be used as a pejorative again, when up until 5 seconds ago, people who believed in UFOs and aliens, the most basic of all conspiracy theories, right? Entry-level conspiracy theory, all that's now being validated by the government. And they're saying, oh yeah, you know, we called people like that crazy and insane for the past 100 years, but they were actually right about everything. So what is a conspiracy theorist at this point? Obviously, some things are a conspiracy theory and some things are just not true, despite the fact that there may be crazy people who believe in it. But it seems to me like being a conspiracy theorist in 2023 really just means you're correct too soon. You're correct before the government validates that you're correct. And I don't know about you, but I don't really trust the government enough to validate what's true and what's not true, right? You know, I have a podcast with Roseanne Barr coming out in a couple days on her podcast channel, which first of all, shout out to Roseanne, love you. But, you know, she asked me a question. We were talking about God and religion, and you'll see it in the episode. And I was talking about how I've never really believed in God. I've never been a religious person. I've never, you know, been a spiritual person necessarily. When you see like true, and I'm not someone who actually does necessarily believe in God or not believe. I would like to be pilled on it. But, you know, I feel like I have seen godlessness, though,
Yeah, you have.
in the sense.
all have, yeah.
I've seen people so devoid of God and of purpose and of goodness that they might as well be the devil. They might as well be godless. And it's hard not to see that coming out to play with this movie. You know, how anyone can fix their mouth to slander this movie is insane. And it's really interesting to juxtapose the headlines between Netflix's Cuties, which was basically a softcore film on Netflix that got a ton of backlash a few years ago, and these headlines. So Cuties is a misunderstood coming-of-age film that's being mischaracterized by evil right-wingers, and The Sound of Freedom is a conspiracy theory. You know, you have to ask yourself, why is the American corporate press so desperate to keep Americans from watching this, so desperate to label human trafficking something that I feel like we all, up until 5 seconds ago, were able to agree was a real problem and not a conspiracy theory of any sort, and that we could all find common ground on, something that wasn't political? Why are they so desperate to keep people from watching it? You know, I often say, half kidding, but also completely serious, that getting older is understanding two things. How many people are on drugs? You kind of understand that even people you never would have expected as a kid, when you have those innocence blinders, a lot of people are on stuff, right? Whether it's prescription or otherwise, everyone's just kind of on something. And also, how many people are diddlers? How many people are... And you start to understand that the world truly is ran by people who have an absolute incentive to normalize this. And even if you don't think that that's orchestrated, or that the corporate press doesn't take marching orders from people who absolutely have it on their agenda to normalize it, is there any argument that it's not more normalized than ever before? Have they ever had a flag? I'm waking up in 2023 and they have a flag. They have a politically correct phrase, you know, minor attracted people. It seems to me like diddlers have had the come up of all come ups. They are more normalized than ever. Even if they're not completely normalized, they're well on their way. And if you think that has nothing to do with an orchestrated, you know, narrative in the corporate press, I just ask you to wake up a little bit and maybe take those blinders off. I know that it's a black pill and that it's a bitter pill to swallow, but you have to break that fourth wall and understand the world really is ran by, and pedophiles, like any other group, protect their own. They are protecting their own group, their own industry, their own institution of child trafficking by slandering this film. I go into basically everything the media says, starting out on the basis that it's a lie and then moving on to find the truth, right? Even I went into it thinking this was going to be maybe, you know, a super Christian right-wing film, maybe a B or C film. I walked in and I saw an A film, very well made, not a drop of a political agenda. Because if you consider protecting children political, I'm questioning why. No religious elements whatsoever. Not at all. Ridiculous. I mean, this movie was made 5 years ago. It's been shelved by Disney and kept on the back burner for 5 years, by the way. And the studio had to crowdfund to even get it released. So before QAnon was even like a group, this movie was made. And I mean, even calling it a Christian movie is a vehicle to make it radioactive. I mean, people don't listen to Christian music unless they're Christian. People probably won't go to a Christian film unless they're Christian, but it's not a religious movie at all. At all, 100%, period, point blank, not religious. As someone who's not religious, I think I would pick up on it if I was watching a religious film. You have to wonder why the corporate press and the mainstream media is desperate to have the borders open. Why they fight so hard for open borders. Did you know that 350,000 minors crossed the border since 2021, and 85,000 of those, a huge chunk, if you can't do the math, have gone missing ever since? Seems like an inventory of people for a sick industry that our elites partake in. You know, you can only sell a pill one time. You can only sell a drug once to a person, right? Once they ingest it, obviously. You can sell a human being over and over and over again. And you can look around, we already acknowledge that people buy children. You look at adoption agencies, foster homes, etc. You know, those are places where you buy children. You pay money to bring a child into your life. And we don't like to think of it that way, obviously, because, you know, for all intents and purposes, you know, we assume everyone has the best of intentions when they go and buy children. Adopting a child is buying a child. However, why people would deny that there are people who would want to buy a child for purposes other than to be a loving parent to that child, I mean, you have to just be completely naive. The same way that you can buy drugs legally from a doctor, you can also buy it on the black market if you want to buy it for other purposes by having, you know, a higher dose or different, you know, for different reasons. There's a lot of reasons why people buy things. There's a black market to every industry. You know, this article, Sound of Freedom, is a superhero movie for dads with brainworms. Why exactly do superheroes only need to be portrayed as wearing spandex with special effects and in fantastical situations? Why is it an issue that Americans are seeing a film with purpose that shows them that being a superhero doesn't, need any of those things? It actually just means doing the right thing, helping a child, helping a person who is being oppressed in this way makes you a superhero. God forbid a movie inspires hope and purpose and a sense of urgency around a real issue for Americans. This movie has a right-wing bias. I'm sorry, even if it did, which it does not at all in any way. First of all, I'm begging people to not make protecting children, being anti-child trafficking to be a right-wing virtue, right? Like, I'm not that invested in winning the culture war so much that I need my side to be on the winning issue of that. I would hope to God that we all can come together on that. But apparently we can't, right? Apparently we can't. But I'm sorry, even if it had a right-wing bias, are we pretending like 99.9% of films coming out of Hollywood don't have a left-wing bias, a progressive bias? Like all these cartoons right now don't have non-binary characters and show trans kids? Like even if it had a right-wing bias, it's allowed to. But it doesn't. This is among the most insidious, if not the most insidious, issues of our time, of all time, of humanity as a species, is the fact that we, as a species, seem to convince ourselves that we can own other human beings, that we can use other human beings, whether it's physically, emotionally, or mentally, for our own satisfaction. And if you don't find that worthy of setting down your, political bias, your, culture war glasses, I would say that there has been irreparable damage done to your soul. There's a lot of slander and things said about the makers of the movie, that they're crazy and they're QAnon and they're super right-wing. And even if they were, if you're bringing light to this very real issue that is real regardless of how crazy you are in other areas, or even about this issue, if you're someone that's bringing light to that, I don't care how crazy you are. And do we need to pretend as if 99% of the people responsible for the movies, television, and products and entertainment that comes out of Hollywood are not nuts themselves, are not wing nuts themselves? You got the makers of The Matrix, the brothers, are women now. You have the makers of iCarly and all these cartoons that we all grew up on, sneaking in foot fetish content into the episodes. You have people accused of child predation and sometimes convicted of child predation and harming children that are fired and then rehired once the heat simmers down in Hollywood and put back onto work in movies as directors all the time. Oh yeah, because like every other group, protect their own. And the reason you see them seemingly overrepresented at the height of, powerful people in government and Hollywood is because they understand that to get away with what they have to get away with, what they want to get away with, is to become too powerful to take down. And those are the roles in society, powerful directors, government officials, famous celebrities. Those are the people that you really can't take down easily. So if you are someone that has even a drop of distrust for the mainstream media, for the corporate press, then you should want to watch this movie even more. I mean, I wouldn't even watch it really if the media wasn't telling me not to. That was my sign that I had to watch it. We really need to get it together as a society. I don't give a what we disagree on. I don't give a about any other culture war issue. This should not be a culture war issue. This should be a human issue. And if the slandering and the downplaying of this issue in the mainstream media and of this movie causes even one scenario where someone doesn't report something they maybe think is suspicious happening to a child because they've been told this isn't really a big deal, and that one child goes through even a moment more of pain and hurt than they had to, then the mainstream media has done more harm to children than this movie would ever do. But they don't care. And you really need to ask yourself why they don't care. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel as well as my podcast channel, The Blair White Project, link in the description. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.